All right, so there's been some pretty interesting stuff coming out of the Justice Department. Like it's straight out of some kind of drama, and it all goes back to this one thing, a top federal prosecutor resigning. So we're going to take a deep dive, like really get into what happened, what it means, what it tells us about, like all the pressures going on inside the DOJ.
And you know what's wild? This one person's choice to just quit, it could actually show us a ton about how independent our courts and stuff really are.
Exactly. We're looking at a Washington Post article, and Glenn Kirshner went over it on his YouTube too. The big name here is Denise Chung. Now, you might not have heard of her, but she was the chief of the criminal division at the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. That's a mouthful. But the point is, she's been doing this for a while, 24 years as a federal prosecutor, in fact.
Yeah, that's a long time. Someone with that much experience, they've seen a lot, right? So for her to just up and quit, that's something.
Totally. So we've got this super experienced prosecutor quitting. Why are we doing this deep dive? To figure out what made her quit, why you should care, and what this whole thing shows us about what's going on inside the Justice Department. Like, can they really do their job fairly, or is there a bunch of political stuff getting in the way?
I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? Can the Justice Department really be fair when people are saying politicians are messing with their decisions? Think about it.
Okay, so let's get into the details because this Washington Post article lays it all out. They said Denise Chung quit on a Tuesday morning, and it was because she refused to do something the Trump administration wanted. They wanted her to freeze money for a Biden plan, these environmental grants. It was a lot of money, too, like $20 billion for climate and clean energy projects.
So if you zoom out a bit, it looks like the last administration was trying to undo a lot of what the current one is doing, right? And with that much money involved, things get political real fast.
For sure. And the Post said the guy who wanted to freeze this money was the head of the Environmental Protection Agency at the time. He was even saying publicly that he wanted to, get rid of these grants completely. Now, Chung said in her letter that the first step, like just asking the bank to put the money on hold, that wasn't the problem. She and the FBI actually did that at first.
So it sounds like they took a normal, cautious step at the beginning, but then something changed, right? They went from a temporary hold to something way bigger.
That's it. The problem came when Chung's boss, the interim U.S. Attorney Ed Martin, told her to force the bank to freeze the money completely, like make it part of a criminal investigation. And Chung said in her letter that this was after someone from the Office of Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil B. asked them to open an investigation into the grants, an investigation Chung thought was bogus.
Okay, so for you listening, the order is important here. First, they're asked to investigate. Then they're told to freeze money because of this investigation, even though the chief of the criminal division, Denise Chung, thought the whole investigation was BS.
And Chung really spelled it out in her resignation letter. She wrote, "When I explained that the amount of evidence didn't support that action, you, U.S. Attorney Martin, said you thought there was enough evidence. Because I thought I wasn't legally allowed to write such a letter, I told you I wouldn't do it. Then you asked for my resignation."
That's her saying straight up, we disagree about whether this is even legal. And for a prosecutor with her experience, that legal authority part is huge. She's basically saying they're overstepping their boundaries.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just Chung who was worried. The Washington Post talked to some people who knew what was going on, but they wouldn't give their names. They said this whole thing was a profound departure from Justice Department policy and norms. They were probably lawyers or something. And they warned that doing stuff without enough evidence or a good legal reason is a misuse of the Justice Department's powers of criminal investigation. And it just helps them achieve political goals regardless of the law.
See, those anonymous sources, they back up what Chung is saying. It looks like the Justice Department, which is supposed to be independent and follow the law, might be getting messed with. And that phrase, political goals regardless of the law, that's a big red flag, right? Like, are they abusing their power?
Yeah, this is where it gets even more interesting, and you should pay attention. What Glenn Kirshner is saying on YouTube is that Chung's resignation wasn't a one-time thing. He says there were a bunch of people quitting the DOJ while Trump was president. He said at least 7 senior U.S. public corruption prosecutors quit the week before Chung did.
Wow. That many experienced prosecutors quitting all around the same time. That's got to make you wonder, right? It makes it seem like maybe a lot of people in the Justice Department were unhappy or disagreed with something back then, not just in this one case.
And there's more. Kirshner also talked about Danielle Cesson, the interim U.S. attorney in Manhattan, and one of her top deputies quitting. They apparently quit after Emil B. the same guy from before, told them to drop the corruption charges against New York Mayor Eric Adams.
And get this, the reason they supposedly wanted to drop the charges was alleged political malfeasance and the case's impact on Adams' ability to carry out the Trump administration's immigration enforcement policies. So basically, they're linking a criminal case to the administration's political goals. That's pretty wild.
Right, and they say Danielle Sasson refused to drop the charges against Eric Adams, called the whole thing corrupt, and then quit.
So here's another example of a high-up person in the Justice Department saying, no, I won't do this thing that seems politically motivated, and then they quit rather than go along with it. It really makes you think that these weren't just random disagreements, but maybe part of a bigger problem.
Oh, and the lead prosecutor on the Eric Adams case, Higgins Scotton, he quit too. Part of his resignation letter is pretty intense, he wrote. If no lawyer within earshot of the president is willing to give him the advice that a dismissal of the case is dead wrong, then I expect you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion, but it was never going to be me.
That's a powerful statement, man. This guy is basically saying, I'm not going to betray my morals and what I think is right, even if the president himself is pressuring me. The way he said it, you can tell he thought the whole situation was seriously messed up.
So let's just compare the experience levels here, because it's a pretty big difference.
Yeah.
You've got Denise Chong, who's been a federal prosecutor for 24 years, and she's being told to do something she thinks is illegal by Ed Martin, the interim U.S. attorney. But Kirshner said on YouTube that Martin had never even prosecuted a traffic ticket before he got this job.
Yeah, that's a huge difference in experience, right?
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if the people who were getting appointed to these important positions in the Justice Department were really qualified. It seems like knowing the law and being ethical might not have been their top priorities.
Okay, so to sum it all up, the main problem seems to be this. A really experienced prosecutor, Denise Chong, refused to do what a political appointee, Ed Martin, told her to do because she thought it was legal. And Ed Martin, he was the interim U.S. attorney, but he had never even been a prosecutor before. This all led to Chong being asked to resign.
And when you look at this, along with all the other people who quit, a pretty worrying pattern starts to emerge. You've got all these experienced professionals in the Justice Department feeling like they have to quit their jobs because they're being told to do things that are ethically wrong or illegal. And it seems like these orders are coming from people who were appointed for political reasons.
Exactly. And what this means for you, the listener, is that this is a really big deal. It makes you worry that the Justice Department, which is supposed to be fair and treat everyone equally under the law, might be getting messed with by politicians.
And you know what's really important for you to understand? All these people quitting and the reasons they're giving for quitting, it makes people doubt the entire justice system.
No.
If people think that prosecutors are making decisions based on what politicians want instead of what's fair and based on evidence, then the whole system starts to fall apart.
So what does all of this mean for you? It means that a prosecutor who had been doing this job for 24 years felt so strongly that what she was being asked to do was wrong, that she decided to quit rather than do it. This wasn't just a little disagreement. It was a huge fight about the ethics and legal principles that are supposed to guide the Justice Department. And it looks like a lot of other people shared her concerns.
This brings up a really important question for you to think about. What happens to the Justice Department, to its independence and integrity, if all the experienced legal professionals feel like the only thing they can do when they're being told to do something politically motivated and illegal is to quit?
And that leads us to our final thought for you today. What does it really mean for justice itself when experienced people feel like they have to quit their jobs because of ethical concerns? Was this just a one-time thing, a few people disagreeing? Or is it a sign of a much bigger problem, a weakness in our legal system that we need to fix so that our justice system can be fair and effective? Think about it.